Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Thursday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. Today, we bring back our friend from Threatlocker, founder and CEO, Danny Jenkins. How you doing today, Danny?
George, thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining on. I know you're a busy guy. Let's get into the heat of it, right? Because lots of stuff happened recently in technology land, and it's almost unavoidable. And it's worth hearing your opinion because, I mean, you guys put some pretty clear statements out there. So I'd love to hear it from the man himself. So let's talk about Kaseya, right? I mean, that's the newest and latest and greatest. Probably not the greatest, worst, but not a good situation. This has, I mean, you would think SolarWinds earlier in the year would have unraveled the onion a little bit. But I don't know if anybody feels like they've been directly impacted by SolarWinds yet. So like nobody knows, right? It's kind of, hey, it's out there.
So in the I mean, SolarWinds obviously very active in the MSP community, but the Orion product is a pretty small usage in the MSP community.
Yeah.
So I think in the MSP community we didn't see too much impact on that. In the enterprise, we saw impact, we saw attacks, we saw breaches, we saw attempted attacks, and we've certainly spoken to a lot of clients who were directly impacted by it. I think the difference with SolarWinds is it was a very sophisticated attack, and it was, I mean, no excuse for it, but it was very sophisticated, and they got in a very. It wasn't the case that they just found a vulnerability and exploited it. They got into their source code. They modified their source code. They got them to deploy something. It was the type of attack that should scare any software company.
I mean, I think Microsoft actually got hit. They said they had source code that was potentially, kind of unlocked there, or some, they grabbed some of it. I mean, that's a little bit scary, right? Because everybody on the planet, other than I guess the Mac users, are on Microsoft.
So, yeah, well, so we get to read the vulnerabilities now, don't we? And so and obviously we've seen, and that's the thing. We see all these increases in vulnerabilities and patches and breaches, and no one really knows how did they find out about this? How did someone get this? And what's linked to what else? Because you start getting into SolarWinds, you get source code, you get. Well, for Microsoft, that allows. I mean, the vulnerability is always there, but that doesn't mean that the acceleration of delivery of those vulnerabilities and exploits is certainly a concern.
Yeah, 100%. So to your point, right, the Orion product wasn't widely used in MSP land per se, or at least not the smaller guys. By the way, you got a fan on the line, Darren Cirillo from California. Big, I hear new Threatlocker customer, so that's good. So fast forward 6 months into what we just experienced over the last 30 days or so, which is, okay, well, the original founding product of the now 27 product Kaseya stack, their RMM solution, which is probably the oldest of the solutions, probably, really got jammed. And it doesn't seem like, from all of the things I've read, it didn't take long for somebody to, like a junior security analyst, kind of stumbled upon it, right, out of Europe, and said, hey, there's some things happening here. Like, are you guys going to fix them? And before they had I mean, I guess they were in the process of fixing them, but the bad guys beat them to the punch. Is that a good characterization of what happened?
Well, and it's funny because I think I did a webinar the week before that and said, look, public holidays are the worst holidays for MSPs. We see more attempts on ransomware attacks on public holidays than we do any other time. And we saw Memorial Day before that, and JBS got hit Memorial Day, I think. So right, and they and there was we literally saw more denies on attempted attacks from people getting into RMMs and pushing out software, not through exploits, just through weak passwords or exposed API keys or other things, than we had for the 6 weeks before Memorial weekend. And I think we did a webinar and we were talking about, look, these are the times that people are getting in. And of course, 4th of July weekend, long weekend, lots of time to do lots of damage. So they obviously did a lot of homework, because they didn't just go, it wasn't one server we're talking about here. I mean, because they were very quick at shutting down the cloud but it was lots and lots of servers. So, and they didn't just find all those servers magically. They'd obviously been doing port scans on the internet, collecting that data, and getting ready to launch the attack as fast as they possibly could, and taking cover over the 4th of July weekend so they could essentially get more damage done than anything else. And it's a problem. You get software companies, and look, there's I'll say this, but also don't jump out the frying pan into the fire, because software companies that they, like I say, like ConnectorWise, like SolarWinds, they've been around for so long, and they've gone through revisions after revisions of source code and engineers and acquisitions, and it's a constant battle to fight, and there's no excuse for it in this day and age to have vulnerabilities and to not have them patched faster. And a vulnerability in this case probably should have been dealt with faster, but the reality is that they have these vulnerabilities, and then someone gets in and they did it all in one weekend, like just literally said, we're going to take down as many as we can. And it was terrifying because Kaseya was calling customers, and the first week,
4th of July weekend, they were calling customers.
Oh yeah, they did. I mean, their response, I can't fault it. I mean, I know if you're seen as the MSP at the other end of it, they were calling customers and telling them to shut down their servers, saying shut down your servers now, before it's too late. And they were literally, we were on a call to one of our clients when they said that, and at first we started seeing these files come through this agent, which it was in the K working folder, and it was like the first thing we think when we see a block file coming from Kaseya at that kind of mass scale, and we saw it at mass scale, was, have we missed an update of Kaseya? Because we track updates for applications. So we start analyzing that, and then we very, very quickly realized that this is ransomware, and we need to, so we had to respond to that as well, because most of our customers are in lockdown secured mode, so they weren't impacted by it. But those who were just installed, they were still in their learning period. We were like, okay, you got to get these machines locked down fast, because even though you haven't gone through the week learning, you need to block these files, you need to get this locked down, because we're seeing this happen. And nobody really knew at first until they got that call what was happening.
I think some of the challenge, Danny, is that, like when you get onboarded with some of these products and they're like, hey, our status, I was gonna say status quo or standard operating procedure is whitelist these folders, open up these ports, do this so that the solution actually works. And we've heard after all of this that, hey, you can't trust that anymore. You're going to have to change the way that you implement these solutions if you decide to continue with them at all. Like, how do you, like the average guy who's swiping the credit card at a trade show and putting a solution in, that probably doesn't know to ask that question.
Well, and I think that's right. And we work with MSPs who from 50 endpoints right up to MSPs with tens of thousands of endpoints and different maturity levels and different security systems. And it's very hard for a smaller business to really understand this, because look, I spend so much time investigating, researching, looking at markets, look at some patterns, and we have teams of people doing that here. MSPs can't do that. They can't put tens of people in to manage these solutions. And then, so what ultimately ends up happening is they get this product bling. So they go to a trade show and they say, okay, I'm scared. I'm scared of ransomware. I'm scared of malware. I'm scared of anything happening to my machines. And they say, they go up to a company and they say, well, we got the best ransomware detection in the world. And they say, okay, I'm going to buy that. That solves my problem. And then they go home feeling comfortable at night that, oh, this is going to get blocked because this is really good ransomware protection. So, but the reality is, no, there is no best detection in the world, because you can't have best detection in the world because you can't detect everything. There's better companies, there's good companies, there's bad companies, there's well-marketed companies, there's under-marketed companies that are incredibly good technologies. But the MSPs are just desperate. They need to feel better. So when an EDR says to them, we got your back, they want to believe this. They want to go home and say, okay, we're covered. And they'll put insurance policies in that we guarantee, unless this with 16,000 exceptions in there, we'll do this, and it makes them feel better. And that's probably a bad stage to be in, because as an MSP, you need to be scared, you need to be worried, you need to be looking how can I control my environment? What can I do better? Can I check and it's not just about products, it's about more restrictions, more policies, more hurdles. Some of this is free stuff, the amount of things they can put in place that don't even cost them anything, like something as simple as don't let my servers go out to the internet. I mean, thinking about the SolarWinds Orion breach, we had a number of clients running at Orion, and they had ring fencing policies to stop Orion going out to the internet, and that was a Threatlocker feature, and it was able to stop that product going out to the internet except to SolarWinds. And it makes it easy. But equally, anyone who wasn't a Threatlocker client, who wasn't paying for services, could have just shut down their outbound firewall, and that breach would have gone away. And like the problem is people get so comfortable with their antivirus and they take away security hygiene. And when you're building security, tools are there to help you. You buy a nice DeWalt drill or impact driver to put the screw in the wall, and you can still manually screw the screw in the wall. But the Threatlocker is a tool. These EDRs, they're tools. They're there to help you. At the end of the day, you've still got to use them. You've still got to put the screw in the wall. You've still got to lock down your firewalls. You've still got to configure the tools, and we're going to make that easier for you. And I think it's our responsibility as vendors to support our customers, educate our customers, and push our customers as much as we can to keep getting better. And there is no perfect. It's just strive for the next level of better. So we always.
The good line, right? It's like there is no status quo. There's a constantly moving target is what it is, right? So you actually have to, there is no standing still. You have to constantly keep up with it a little bit. So let me just ask this question outright, just to make sure that like I'm hearing it direct from the source. Everybody who watches this will hear it direct from the source. If the people who are subscribed to Threatlocker had Threatlocker deployed under this lockdown mode, I'm sure you can explain what that means versus the learning, like you said earlier, your solution definitively stopped the people who are potentially going to be affected by either SolarWinds that you mentioned earlier, or now Kaseya. It actually prevented those people from being affected.
Yeah, in both cases, SolarWinds and Kaseya. In the Kaseya case, so there's different levels to our protection. So we have our whitelisting, which is basically this isn't that we did some magic and we were able to find the bad ransomware, and it's not smoke and mirrors. Don't let it run unless it's on the whitelist. Mm-hmm. So everyone who had deployed Threatlocker, who had gone through the learning, who had enabled the whitelisting that Kaseya was pushed out to, it was blocked. It was blocked. It did not infect them. Seems they did not get ransomware, and that was a very clear black. And like that, it's not magic, it's not smoke and mirrors. It's just our whole nature of zero trust. So in the case of SolarWinds, that was a bit more complex because that was on the whitelist. It was signed by SolarWinds. It was embedded in the code, so the vulnerability was still there. Where we were effective at stopping that, and we don't have too many SolarWinds Orion clients, but where we did, and the ones we do have are very, very big because it's and they tend to have very good policies in place. They'd actually ring fence SolarWinds to stop it going out to the internet except to SolarWinds, so it wasn't able to get the instruction. Now, I will say the malicious code was still running because it was inside SolarWinds. It was on the whitelist. But this is why we have to assume, look, if you're running software, I mean, of course, everyone's very emotional about Kaseya right now, and Kaseya's, it's so scary. But if you're running any software, whether it's Kaseya, whether it's Angry Birds, whether it's Google Chrome, it has access to everything that you have access to. So all you can do to reduce your surface area to get yourself ahead of the attacks is don't let the software run unless it needs to run. If you don't need it, just don't allow it. It's simple. That takes away the huge area, and that's where the zero trust, the whitelisting approach stopped the Kaseya breach. And the other area is don't let it do more than it needs to. Keep in its lane. So if it doesn't need to talk to PowerShell, don't let it talk to PowerShell. If it does, let it talk to PowerShell. If it doesn't need to see your files, don't let it see your files. If it doesn't need to go out to the internet, because guess what? If you take away an application's internet ability, except to the sites it needs to, it means if it's compromised, it can't go and download a malicious payload or upload your data. So just limit what it can do. And do this, and look, you can go beyond there. You could start talking about administrative privilege and storage policy privileges and all things like that, but take these steps from day one. Definitively, it's going to put you in a better position. In the case of Kaseya, that we had one client who was infected with that malware, and they were just onboarded. I think 2 days before, they were still in learning mode. And look, it doesn't help me that it says it would have been denied. And we did everything we can to help our clients recover from those situations. But everyone else who was secured, it was locked down. We had some clients, unfortunately, who had partially deployed Threatlocker. That's the other part about any security you use. Partial deployment is partial deployment, partial protection. So we had some who had partial deployment to their more senior stack, their compliance stack, and things like that, because they wanted to check boxes. It protected those. It didn't protect the other ones, but because you can't protect what you're not on. But it ultimately, if you think about security differently, and it's not just from a Threatlocker. Look, Threatlocker is a fantastic tool. It's going to make your life easier getting to these policies in place. It's going to make your life easier striving towards zero trust. But if you think about security, every Monday morning, come into your office and say, what one thing can I do today to make my environment more secure? What can I do today to make my environment more secure? And you know what? It could be that you change a policy on computers being locked. You tell all employees, if you walk away from your desk and your computer's not locked, you're going to be reprimanded. And maybe 80% of them will follow the policy. That's a huge impact. You just had to make one statement to make that happen. It could be that you log into your firewalls for your client servers and stop them going out to the internet unless you've listed a site. It could be that you turn on personal firewalls on laptops on the network and desktops on the network. Tiny little things. Maybe I increase my password policy. Maybe I just tell everyone, change your passwords now. Like, go and change them. And there's something you can do every Monday morning when you come in. Just one thing. I'm going to get my life more secure. I'm going to do something better. If you keep doing that, you keep striving to better, rather than just looking at this as an unmanageable problem, you're going to be ahead of your peers. And that's where you need to be. There's no such thing as unhackable, but you can be less hackable.
100% agree. So let me flip the script just a little bit. So Microsoft just announced a more consumable Windows Virtual Desktop through Office 365. It's a flat fee. It's per user. Obviously, the people who are heavy into Microsoft land are like, hey, if nothing is really stored at the local endpoint and everything is in the cloud, obviously it'd be great if everything was SaaS, right? But for everything that isn't SaaS, if all of the customers' processing is happening in Microsoft with Active Directory authentication and all that stuff, do I really even need this additional security layer because Microsoft's saying that it's more secure by default because it's within their ecosystem? Do you agree with that idea, or is it still, you still need to apply security policies and other third-party tools on top of that?
Okay, so we often think about ransomware as I lost my data. I had to recover. And for MSPs, it's not always about loss because they've got good backup solutions in place, but it's I had to recover. So my beer and my boat on the 4th of July disappeared because I had to recover from this loss. And it was painful for me. But the data part of this, look, at the end of the day, data theft's been around since well before ransomware, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And the recovery part of ransomware, look, you should be able to recover. You should have offsite backups. You should have things in place. And look, these guys will do everything they can to manipulate your backups. They'll get into your Azure accounts. They'll delete your VDIs. They will do everything. And whether it's Azure, whether it's thinking, to make sure they get paid. That's going to happen. The thing is two things about the whole RD remote desktop thing. Look, not opposed to it having someone else managing it. That's great. You're still going to stay in the same vulnerabilities in Print Nightmare. They can still steal your data when you're accessing, because at some point you need to access your data. At some point you need to access your health records or your tax returns or your customers' financial data. It doesn't matter whether it's on a VDI, a PC, or it's somewhere it has to be accessed. So having virtualized environments that are controlled is a good way of limiting your exposure. But you still need to assume, I'm going to put threat detection on this. You still need to assume I'm going to put strong policies in place to stop things being pushed out to this. You still need to assume that any godlike tool that you're installing, like an RMM, can be used and weaponized against you to extract, to encrypt, to steal, and to get social security numbers. I mean, people often don't realize this is a side effect of ransomware. You know, when you get ransomware, well, hopefully you don't know when you get ransomware, but they go and take your files and upload them to the internet. And you pay your ransom, you don't pay your ransom, you get the data back, it doesn't matter, right? They now have all your emails with all your partners. So what they can do is they can launch spear phishing campaigns against your partners, against you. they have your employees' social security numbers. So suddenly your employees come in one day, or one of them comes in, and you don't even know it's related, saying, "Oh, my identity was stolen." And they have your customers' tax IDs where they've submitted W-4s or whatever the accounting forms are. They take all that data and they use that. They sell it on the dark web. They use it in cybercrime going forward. They have your QuickBooks database. All of that they've got. Doesn't matter whether you pay them or not. Do you really believe these guys are going to be honest and say, "Okay, I've deleted your data, cross my heart and hope to die"? Yeah. They've got that data. And the ransomware is, I almost think it's the best type of attack, because if it's only ransomware, because guess what? You've been hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny when people come up and said, "Oh, I had this MDR or EDR or something in place," and they called me up and said, "You've been hit by ransomware." No shit, I turned on my computer, I noticed. So it doesn't help me. I can see I've been hit. It's pretty obvious. My screen's red, it's asking for cryptocurrency, and all my files are gone. So I think if you assume the data is your asset, everyone's always after the data. Having a backup is absolutely important. But backup, when you're restoring from a backup, and I'll say it's bad because everyone fails sometimes. When you're restoring from a backup, you have failed. Your security has failed.
That's true.
Period. You are now in recovery mode. So that is recovery. It's not security. Dado might have something to say about that, but it is recovery.
What do you tell the guys that say, "Hey, I get it. This security thing's not going anywhere. We need to double down. There's now a whole ecosystem of solutions that you can put in place, even from 5 years ago." But the end customer's experience, like those hurdles, those speed bumps that you keep on talking about, they also are their speed bumps too. And now you're getting to either the end customer saying, this is just too much hassle, take it out. Or maybe their application is so legacy that you can't put some of the roadblocks in place because it requires godlike permissions to run.
Okay, so I think that's true. So let's deal with the first thing. Speed bumps are there for a reason. I hate them. I have them on the road outside my house, and I hate them. But they're there for a reason. No kids are dying on the road, so for a reason. In terms of what customers are saying, right now, there's always an exception to this, but 95% of businesses are not pushing back when you tell them why. One of the things we do is we help people explain why. We help them align with government policy. We help them show them what the executive order from the White House said, what CIS said, and how this affects people like Colonial, and how many dental offices have been hit by ransomware. So we help them go to the client and say, "Look, you are exposed. I need to protect your data." All of these guys are watching the news. I'm a security guy. I can't get in the elevator with someone asking my opinion. Like the janitor asking, "How do I stop getting hacked?" Business owners, and everyone wants my opinion to say, how can I be more secure? So I think as an MSP, your job is to articulate to your clients why they need security. And frankly, I will say this: if they really don't believe you, you probably have a trust issue, because they should believe you. I know they're going to push back, but if they really don't believe what you're saying, then it's a concern. You need to think about, well, how can I be more credible to my client? We'll help you with documentation. We'll help you with data to back it up. But frankly, they can just turn on the TV. They know, and your job is to tell them, yes, you're at risk. Because one of the things some of them think is, I thought I'm not at risk. And then coming on to the next question about the godlike tools that need administrative permissions, limit what they can do as much as you can. You can't bury your computer in concrete. Reduce your surface areas risk. So if you have accounting software that needs to run as administrator, take away the administrative rights and use elevation control, whether it's from Threatlocker or whether it's someone else, and then allow that app to run as an administrator, only that app. But make sure when you do allow it to run as an administrator, that you ring fence it so it can't talk to other apps. Because one of the things I demonstrated recently with our own elevation is, look, if you don't ring fence the application, here, you can run this as an admin, and now I can bounce to PowerShell. So make sure you ring fence it. If you're using elevation, whoever it is, make sure that you put policies in place to stop it talking to other apps, because the app itself can't do that much damage. Make sure the app can only access the files It needs to. It might need godlike permissions to those files, but your QuickBooks software doesn't need godlike permission to all of your other files. So
that's true. That's
take away as much as you can, and focus on what you can do right now. Like, take away the user's ability to run things they shouldn't be. Take away, and I know some of this stuff is getting into more difficult stuff, but I will tell you some of the things we did. We just moved into a new office here in Orlando, and first thing we did when we got all the switches deployed was lock down all the MAC addresses on all the switches. Like, it cost us 45 minutes. No one could, yeah. And guess what? Someone could say to you, well, you can spoof a MAC address. Yeah, but you have to know what to spoof. And yes, they could figure out what to spoof, but so you're saying have no security because someone might find a way around that. And then we have other layers and other controls and other things in the network as well. But those type of things, that's what's going to put you ahead. And I know if you're an MSP, you've got small clients that cost money, it costs time. You have to measure, what can I get the biggest bang for my buck out of? What can I get the least amount of work? But just keep thinking about things I can do. And my background's enterprise, so we always think about controls. Don't close your eyes hoping that your threat detection is going to solve your problems. It's there. I have a house alarm on my house. Having 5 layers of threat detection is like putting 5 house alarms in and not locking your front door. Someone can still walk in and take the TV off the wall. So think about controls, think about whitelisting, think about ring fencing, think about firewall controls, think about network controls, switch controls, Duo. I mean, there's or any kind of dual factor authentication. Because when you think about security, if you think about always think about there's 3 ways you can stop any threat. And you should use all 3. You can stop it through a human way. So if I email you a piece of malware now and you don't open it, it's stopped. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to cut people's hands off in the US, so that's out of the way. We can train them and we can reduce our risk. We train our staff. They use know before they go through training. It's part of our standard procedure. And we do phishing tests and people fail and we improve it. There's the detection way. That's your antivirus, your EDR, your threat hunting, your email scanning. And then there's the control way. And the control way is the absolute. So if I send an email to you with a piece of malware in and you open it, if your antivirus is going to detect it or it's not, you have no control over that. If you use application whitelisting, it's not going to run unless the IT manager or the MSP approves it. Same example with phishing. If I send a phishing email to you, if you don't click on it, fine, but let's assume you click on it. Let's assume it wasn't picked up in your email filter as a phishing website. That's your detection. It may or may not detect it. If you have dual factor authentication in place, that's an absolute. They have to push that to get into the app. They're things that you can control as an MSP. You can't control user behavior. You can't control whether your antivirus, whether your EDR will detect something in time. You can control what the user, you can put controls in place that are very tangible. Look at all 3, but I always think of starting the security from a control point of view. That's an absolute. That's what you can do.
So got a couple comments here that I'm going to just throw into the mix because it came through. And of course, everybody, if you have a question for Danny or you have a point to make, feel free to push those through. So our friend Keith says, you are touching on the core weaknesses of the MSP. Commodity sellers do not understand business process, don't understand integration and development. We need to be technical and understand data integration. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that. With that, Keith, I think that's, unfortunately, a lot of the people who get into MSP world maybe started off on their own, came from internal IT, and they're a one-man shop. And over time, we've all been there, right? You started off somewhere and then you grew, right? But that doesn't mean that you have the data security guy on staff, and that doesn't mean that you have the threat intelligence, tracker guy on staff. And like, obviously, as people get bigger, those are people that may get hired, but the other problem is that there's only so many people out there, right? There's a lot of demand for those jobs. I'm sure Danny can tell you they've been hiring a lot of people, and they're just not as readily available as you would think, right? So that's number 1. Number 2, Darren, who just signed up with Threatlocker, he said that earlier today in this call. He said, for the record, we are in our ongoing rollout of Threatlocker has been unbelievably smooth and very few users even noticed it. That's pretty good news.
Well, and most people don't change their behavior. They use their computer. So users don't generally notice it, because if they use 5 apps, they use 5 apps. That doesn't change. They notice it when they try and do something that they don't normally do, like download a coupon clipper.
Yeah, the coupon clipper that's also redirecting all their searches to some ghost search engine that's collecting all their data. Not that the regular ones.
Well, so here's something that you may not know, or you may know. You use a password manager. They're great. You should use them. Obviously, find one you can trust if you. But when you log into a website and it asks you, do you want to save your password? So it pops up and says, hey, do you want to save this password? It's the password manager that asks that question, not Google Chrome. Well, the reason the password manager is able to ask that question is because it's able to see you enter the password. So we take a decision to trust SolarWinds or trust LastPass to be responsible with that. Well, so can Honey. And any other Chrome extension, or most other Chrome extensions that you enable. So when you enable those things, you got to ask yourself, this thing can see everything in my web browser.
Yeah.
Do I trust it? Not just do I trust them as a company, but am I willing to take the risk that they may be compromised? And if I take that risk that I may be compromised, what does that mean?
So I mean, a lot of people just automatically install the Chrome widget for you, right? So you don't even think about, you don't think twice about that. So let me flip back for a second. So now all of a sudden, the guys who have kind of matured through, the way, right, and have either gone through their own SOC 2 or started going through their ISO certifications, or the guys that are going through CMMC or even HIPAA for whatever it's worth, right, where they have to ask for, hey, are you compliant? Can I get a BAA? Like, now the MSPs turned back around and said, I now need to look backwards at the vendors that I've chosen and go back and start knocking down the doors and checking the questions to say, hey, are you, when was the last time, you validated your code, or what are your security policies? Can I get a copy of this? Can I, like, all of a sudden, like, all this kind of reverse due diligence is kind of starting to percolate upstream. Probably not a bad idea, right? If nothing other than, one, your customer may come and actually say, hey, I saw these guys in the news. Do you use their software? No. Or yes, but we're switching. Or yeah, we got affected. Or oops, sorry, your computers might not turn on today. Or two, and I know I'm going down a couple avenues. And now it seems, whether it started already or it's in the middle of happening, the insurance carriers now starting to ask more questions to make sure they can either not pay you in the event that something happens, or make it harder for you to actually get a claim to go through. So is all of this valid behavior? Is this what you expected to happen, I guess?
Yeah, well, so, and I think it's important that you ask your vendors, show me your SOC 2 report, show me, challenge them and feel. So the two things I'd be challenging is, what can they do? And somebody asked, we did training this morning, they asked the question, well, what can Threatlocker do? Can it push out software? No. Why? And challenge, ask them, can it do this? So what does it need to do, and only give it what it needs to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is challenge, ask their SOC 2 reports, read the exceptions. There's going to be exceptions. Doesn't matter who you read, there's going to be exceptions, but read them and see what they are. Doesn't guarantee they won't get breached. It doesn't, and it's not viable, but you should get a feeling of what the culture in the company is. How does the company think about security? It's because you can get that publicly too. You can get that idea. Well, do they seem to be a security aware company? Are they taking actions? Are their staff leaving laptops unlocked that have company data on them at trade shows? Are people using dual factor on their own stuff? They're things you can ask your sales guy, do you have to use dual factor on your email? If they say no, then you're probably dealing with a company that has a bad culture from security. We have a very strict culture on security. One that bends my ears. We don't let anyone plug anything into their computer that wasn't issued by Threatlocker. They can't buy their own headsets. They can't buy their own keyboards. They can't do anything. So it's a thing that we decided very early on. We're in control of our own environment. We don't allow anyone to use their personal phones. Every single employee, everyone from the janitor to the head, the CTO, gets issued an iPhone. And we have them controlled. They're culture things that we do. We have SOC 2. We've gone through the testing. We do pen testing on our systems. Again, no one's unhackable. But what is their culture like? How are they striving to deliver? So ask those questions. And it's hard as the company gets bigger to get results, but also look at their history online. I'd also say don't jump out of the frying pan into the fire, because I know everyone's upset with Kaseya right now. In some respects, they say the airline you want to fly with is the one that had an accident, because they know what to fix now. And there's a saying: cybersecurity budget before a breach is nothing. Cybersecurity budget after a breach is huge. So companies like SolarWinds and Kaseya are pumping money into security more than ever before right now. So, and not to excuse what happened, but that's the reality of it. It's not always about, well, they did something bad, so I'm going to leave them, because you'll end up finding no products, because there's not many products out there.
Agree. So what, if any, do you feel the government's role is on either the cybersecurity front or even the legislative front, right? Like, there's a lot of people bubbling up now saying, uh-oh, they're going to come after us. We're in the news now, or it's no longer a secret, sandbox that we play in. It's pretty noisy at this point. But then, so on the front end, like, hey, the White House can say all day long, hey, you should do this. Doesn't mean people are going to do it. And then the government, I thought they had all these cybersecurity resources to go out there and, fight back. I'm not like, I don't know if that helped in the Kaseya thing. I'm not sure it helped in the SolarWinds thing or any other thing. So, like, number one, as MSP, I just don't know. Like, even if you report your issue to the authorities because you're required to by some sort of law, that's just them tracking it. That's not necessarily them helping you get through the issue.
The government, I don't feel from a tangible physical point of view, the government can help us. And the reason I say that is, if you graduate college tomorrow with a cybersecurity degree, you probably don't know that much about cybersecurity. Well, I know that because we hire a lot of them. They come in and I spent $200,000. I got a degree, and so you don't know shit. So and one of the challenges we have as a private company is we have to train our staff. We have to educate them. We have to show them. We have to teach them. And that's the only way you can succeed in this world. If you come out of college with a degree, you get two paths you can go down. You can go into the private sector, which typically pays less at this stage, or you can go into the government sector, which pays more when you're graduating college with a degree. Now, the difference being is the government sector pays more today, but in 2 years' time, it won't, because what happens is in the private sector, you suddenly become really valuable because you know what you're doing, you learn, you get technical experience, where the government gives you incremental pay rises based on years of service. And, if I need really good security people, I don't have the restrictions. The government can't just say, I'm paying you $300,000 or $400,000 a year just because you're awesome and you know what you're talking about. They're talking about, what's your time in service. So they tend to end up with, and there are exceptions, and there are patriotic people who do it for other reasons and other things like that, but they tend to end up with a lower class of or lower education, and I don't mean college education, of cybersecurity. So I have no idea what that noise is. I don't know, hopefully it's not echoing through your mic.
It's all good. So you're saying that, all right, the government's hiring a lot of people, but it doesn't mean that they have their story together so that they can instantly, take some sort of report and help you get through it. Obviously, in the Kaseya story, the government was involved, right? Because multiple businesses were attacked at once and it became a headline news. I'm not sure if they were able to track down the evil guys, or if they were able to, help get the decryption key that ultimately got put out there, I think a week and a half ago or whatever it is. But I think that's kind of an exception. It's one of the few times I've heard that actually was a good result from upstairs kind of thing.
Yeah, and there are exceptions as well to that. In terms of the legislation part, the problem I have is that their understanding on what they're drafting. There's a joke video and T-shirts that came out when Mark Zuckerberg was in Congress, and I think it said something like, "We run ads." And we run ads, Senator, or something like that, or Senator, we run ads, I think it was. They couldn't comprehend how Facebook can make money. So, but how can you sustain a business model? Your position is Facebook will not charge for it. So, and it shows that unfortunately Congress is elected mostly full of lawyers, and as MSPs, you often know lawyers are the least technical clients. So, and they're trying to make decisions based on people they hired or people that they appointed that sometimes turn out to be really good guys and they really know what they're talking about, but quite often don't. And then they're also dealing with a drastic change. It takes so long to pass policy and the threats change. I mean, even 5 years ago, how big of an issue was ransomware compared to now? I mean, it was a thing. Yeah, but it wasn't even comprehensible. So these guys are running behind constantly on policy. I think what I think the solution is, and not an easy solution to deal with, is have industry come up with standards combined, have thought leaders. Now the problem is you end up with sales acumen coming into the equation, but I would rather see controls from industry than I would from government. But there are some good controls out there, things like CIS. I mean, that's a good guideline to follow. I mean, it's not perfect, and there's things I disagree with on it, and there's things I miss on it that think I'm missing. But CIS has some pretty good guidelines. So there are some things out there. I feel like the push should be follow this, and I think the consequence should be, if you're not following a set of standards, you become liable in a private manner, in that your clients, like, if you claim that you're, I mean, the government can help with that. Say, hey, ask your MSP, are you following these controls? And then the MSP can say yes or no. And if they say yes and they're lying, then there's a problem. I think that's a smarter play than trying to say, hey, you've got to do this. And I mean, every government legislation in the world basically says you should do this, but you're not required to. So,
yeah,
I think,
I mean, totally get it. Sounds like we need to raise the bar on ourselves in order to, show the people, on the other side of, of the fence, who are in the decision-making seats in the government, that, hey, like, just like the lawyers have the bar, and just like, the doctors have their thing and the engineers have their thing, right? Like the IT people of the world can actually start to, put their own, selves in order. I guess the challenge, though, is that it's so easy, or historically has been so easy, to just start up, put a website up, and say, "Hey, I'm in business. Come hire me." Right? I mean, there's no tests, or I mean, you can do CompTIA and Microsoft certification and stuff like that, but like, there's no badge out there to say, "Hey, listen, I passed the test. I'm now a doctor. I'm now a lawyer." Right? So I guess, like, there's such a big,
and it's such a hard test to pass too, because doctors and lawyers have so much to learn. And
yeah.
I know that they expand outside of that to be innovative, but that nothing much has changed. I mean, there's probably about 5 new medications in the last year, and they all around COVID. So we've got to deal with an ever evolving landscape, and even if we created a test, it would be very hard. Which is why we should be thinking about security on a least privileged basis and not threat chasing basis.
So when we've had a bunch of people on MSP Initiative over the last weeks, months, and they talk about XDR, and they talk about SIEM and log monitoring, and they talk about SOC as a service, and they talk about, the kind of next generation endpoint detection software versus the stuff that's been out forever. I mean, all of this stuff kind of has its place, right? Some of the endpoint detection guys, like SentinelOne, for example, made a similar claim that they were able to help stop the Kaseya situation if they're running SentinelOne. I don't know if that's valid or not, but I mean, at the end of the day, what is the minimum? Like, if you were talking to a budget conscious guy who had customers who were smaller of nature, what is the lowest point? We keep on saying highest point. What is the lowest? What is the floor for them? What is the absolute minimum?
What's the minimum they should be doing? And it's interesting because you talk about SentinelOne, you talk about detection technologies. Yes, they did in many cases stop the breach. There's a difference between stopping reactively, though, because this happened, and malware always happens like this, is that there's a curve, and you have an entry point where nothing is detecting, and then you come up the curve, and eventually these guys catch up, and then you hit the mass point. And the reason you run anti-malware, the reason you run antivirus or EDR is to respond to that curve, and to get at least a chunk of it. And if you can reduce your risk by 80% or 90%, it's by installing a $2 agent on your computer, that's great. Unfortunately, it's never always as effective. You're not going to get it 100%. But my opinion is, look at every area well, it's called entry point. So we have a triangle for this as well. I don't have it in front of me to share, but look at your different areas of entry. And typically you're going to say your endpoint is your biggest exposure, because that's where it is. You're going to go into your applications. You're going to go into your network, your email, web. They're kind of your layers inside your triangle. You want to do 3 things to protect every single one of them. And they can be the same product across multiple of them, but you want to say, okay, so at a network level, let's just say at an endpoint level, I want to implement controls. So I want to implement whitelisting. I want to implement ring fences really at the application level. So we'll say I want to implement whitelisting. I want to implement a firewall, a personal firewall on the computer. I want to implement encryption. These are tangible controls, but you got to have controls in there. You got to have some detection. It doesn't have to be the best detection in the world or the most marketing detection in the world. You need to have some detection. Choose something that's good to manage, that you like, whether it's Windows Defender or whether it's SentinelOne or whether it's Sophos. Put some detection in place. And yes, there are differences between them, and some of them are better than others, but just pick something to look for the bad stuff, because you want that. And you can then get into, so that's your automatic detection. You can then get into manual detection as well, which gives you a step up. So, but I think the minimum is that automatic detection, where you have a SOC or a SIM where data feeding from an endpoint is out. And then the third level is that human layer. It doesn't have to be the most expensive security product in the world. Give the user some training. It reduces your risk. Tell them not to download software unless it's been approved. You've got the control if they try and do it, but if they don't try, the problem is if you just rely on the control and something gets disabled one day, or someone turns it off, and now the user opens something and the antivirus doesn't detect it, then you have no protection. So that's why all 3 sides of the triangle. Do that everywhere. Think about that everywhere. Endpoint, I think, is the biggest exposure. Then get into your applications. So how do I protect my applications? And again, we're talking about user training, making sure that they know how to use the applications, what to do, what not to do. We're talking about detection techniques on the applications. They tend to be harder because they're normally inside the applications, but you can you can have things like monitor your Office 365 for suspicious behavior, your antivirus can detect unusual behavior in Office quite often. So having an antivirus, it's running at the endpoint. So it's typically comes to hand up to that control, and then have your ring fence and control what your app can do. Because one day, one of your apps is going to get compromised. At least limit your damage to the most amount. All 3 together, you're going to do well. Follow that through. We have that triangle published everywhere. Follow, if we don't ask our support for it, ask our sales for it, they'll share it with you. Follow that triangle through and think, I need 3 layers of everything. Start at the bottom, because that's your biggest exposure point, and move your way up. And that's how you get in at the minimum. What I wouldn't recommend doing is adding 5 things on one side and nothing on the other. It's just not effective to have 3 house alarms and no lock on your front door. So think about human control detection. The human part, you've got limited exposure on limited amount what you can do, but it's something. Put them through a basic training course. There's free ones out there.
100%. So you said, hey, a SOC or a SIEM, and there's a few out there that definitely play in MSP land. Is there any, just random question comes to my head. Are there any third parties right now that help manage and administer Threatlocker from a SOC SIEM standpoint? Because I can assume that once you lock something, you've done your learning of what applications are being done. You've done all the work to put all the, the whitelisting in place. But then, Shadow IT, they won, right? Somebody went out, they bought something new. You don't know about it. It showed up out of nowhere. They tried to install it and it's midnight and it can't be installed.
Well, yes. So, obviously, in most cases, the MSP becomes the manager. And talking about a SOC, technically is someone who's looking at data and responding to it in a reactive measure. So typically what you would say, so we have our own internal SOC where, if someone logs into our servers wrong, and we get data sent in from event logs, gets uploaded, and one of our guys looks at it. If someone gets locked out of their Duo account or all of these other things, and that the SOC is responding, looking at, seeing, do I need to react? And this is the problem with SOCs, is they've got to be real good security guys, because you can't just have someone. They have to actually make it a conscious decision: is this right or wrong? And then they can look at things like they can have it with your EDR that alerts something that, okay, someone's trying to run an IP scanner. Do you want to look at this? In Threatlocker's case, it's not so much as a SOC managing it, more so a response team allowing something that was denied that may be business requirement. MSPs normally do that themselves, but we do have a service that we charge an extra for MSPs, where basically all of the approvals come to us, and we review those approvals. We go through a process, whether it's 2 a.m. in the morning. I can actually give you a recent example. We had an approval request come through for an IP scanner at 2 a.m. in the morning. An MSP had their server RDP open on the internet. You know where that's going. Someone got in. They actually were trying to run an IP scanner first of all. So the first thing is we flagged an alarm saying there's something wrong here. Saying, why is someone trying to run an IP scanner at 2 in the morning? And frankly, the MSP should be approving this themselves. We wouldn't approve that. In that case, the next thing we started watching, they tried to run Mimikatz, and we actually contacted the MSP immediately, woke someone up, which is at first was like, why the hell are you calling me at 3 in the morning? It's like someone's trying to cryptolock your server, and it was all blocked. But that's kind of the response time that someone requested, and we can either approve or we don't approve. We tend to, well, we follow the MSP's instruction, but we tend to err cautious to that unless we're giving explicit instruction not to. That takes away the management overhead. Frankly, unless you're a real small MSP, the cost benefit of us doing it for you, we often give it free for onboarding for a period of time if there's an event like Kaseya, but the cost of us doing it isn't worth it, because you get 2,000 endpoints where you get 50 tickets a month. It's like, I'm gonna pay $1 a month for 50. But if you've got 24-hour, it gives you that extra cushion. It depends on how you feel about it, but we do that for our clients. Our clients can do it themselves in-house. I don't know of any third parties that do it, but I don't see there's a market for it, because frankly, if a third party came around, they'd have to be doing it at a real cheap rate to why not just get Threatlocker to do it? They're there 24 hours a day. They respond in 30 seconds.
Oh, I agree. I didn't even know you offered that service. So that's a bonus. I think anybody probably just learned something new. So like, while we got this last few minutes here, I think a lot of people heard a lot of things, right? And they heard about learning mode versus lockdown mode. They heard about, this, premium service, right? After this onboarding period for you to automatically kind of allow, deny. What else? If you were to walk into somebody on the street, like you said, the janitor's asking you in the lift, right? How do I keep myself secure? If you were to say, this is the ultimate value proposition for Threatlocker, it's what?
I think the ultimate value is control. You as an MSP gets to control your customer's environment, which ultimately is going to stop breaches. It's going to stop shadow IT. It should be reducing your tickets, because a lot of tickets come from people doing dumb things. It's control. It's putting you in control without the overhead that you typically have with that kind of power, and removing that overhead, removing the worry about an updated application and things like that. Threatlocker is really total control for you as an MSP. And I know historically MSPs about, how do I make my job easier and take away stuff? But now there's a realization that the quickest way you can go out of business is lack of checks and balances. And it's just giving you control at every level, whether it's administrative permissions, whether it's storage control, whether it's application whitelisting, whether it's what an application can do. It's giving you that visibility and that control for your clients.
That's awesome. I mean, just recently you guys announced that you got a nice investment round. Could you talk a little bit about that and what you guys are doing now that you've kind of injected the next round of funding?
Yeah. So, I mean, frankly, it's all about trying to keep up with the demand right now. So, I mean, for me, it's very important that we get out in front of our customers. So if you look at our calendar, we're pretty much everywhere. I don't think, so whether you're going to a Datto event or a Kaseya event or a ConnectWise event or a Black Hat or anything like that, it's making sure we understand what our customers' needs and pain points are. And we do that by getting in front of them, because it's the best way. I learn more about things that people wish about Threatlocker in the bar than I do sitting on my desk. So getting out in front of customers, we're doing a lot over the next 3 months. So try and visit us somewhere, whether it's a Black Hat, whether it's a DattoCon or IT Nation or Robin Robbins or the bus tour. I think we were everywhere, apart from our guy broke his collarbone the day he was supposed to show up on Monday before he came up on Monday. So hence we were missing on Monday. We didn't bail, I promise.
It's okay. You guys are well represented. Don't worry on the road. I mean, and quite frankly, it's because of the current events. There's a lot of conversation, while we're having beers and sandwiches in the parking lot, right? About, hey, I'm real worried. I mean, we've heard guys who said, maybe this isn't for me, I'm going to retire early, right? We've heard other guys say, hey, there's a business opportunity here, right? Like, why are we avoiding that? So it's been a wide ranging scale of dialogue, but I mean, you guys are definitely out there.
Yeah.
And you're definitely growing, right? You put, new office in Orlando, you guys are hiring like crazy. I guess everybody just wants to, you kind of mentioned it earlier, right? Hey, I have that checkbox, right? I'm good, right? I turned that insurance on, I turned that extra software on, and I'm good. But I think the lesson I get from this conversation is there is no good. There's only getting better, right? And I think that analogy was perfect, because the bad guys seem to wait for you to go to sleep and then do bad things.
And that's it. The other area, I mean, we're massively investing in product. We're looking at more ways we can put controls in place, better ways we can help. We're working on network controls inbound at the endpoint level, but also at the server level, where you have your RMMs hosted, and what we can do to stop people connecting where they shouldn't be. So we're putting a lot of effort into investment of our product, into our investment of our team. I mean, it's interesting. We've installed so many seats in the last month. It's been terrifying in some respects for us, which is a good thing. But our guys, I mean, they're 3 or 4 times more on support tickets right now, and they're still maintaining 30 seconds response time, the cyber heroes.
That's impressive, because we all know that what tickets look like, right? So they can surely balloon real fast. Danny, I really appreciate you coming on. I know you're a busy guy. Obviously, you guys heard the events that these guys are coming up on the big ones, right? I'm sure that there's an events page up on the Threatlocker website. So if you really want to see these guys, I don't think you have to do it.
Yeah. Well, and thank you.
If these guys are interested, I think Frank actually popped in just a little bit ago. He said, hey, already scheduled a demo. I assume he went to the website and had my information, talk to me. So threatlocker.com, I assume, is where they should go, because they might not get to you right away if they send you a LinkedIn message, but your guys are ready to go.
Yes. And again, our SEs, they've through the whole 4th of July weekend, they were working 14 to 16-hour days, like just trying to get people onboarded. So they're there, they've extended their calendars and making sure there's time there. So, book a demo on threatlocker.com and just check it out. It's 45 minutes and the demo, and you'll see it's worth it, and you can get a trial running, and it's pretty quick.
Awesome. Well, everyone, this whole session was recorded. So go to mspinitiative.com under sessions. We'll have that there by the end of the day, and then it'll be online as well. Feel free to rewind, send this to your staff, dig further. It sounds like the more you guys educate, which I'm sure you all are, given the current events, but this is yet another way to not just check a box, but actually implement manageable security. I think that's the best term I could put out there. Something, it sounds like Danny's like, why outsource it to somebody else? I mean, we can help you, but it's really something that you're going to be able to figure out once you get in there. That's actually reassuring, right? Because it's not so much effort that, becomes a time burn, right?
Yeah, well, that's it. And the most effort you put in is the first 2 months. Normally the first month, if you get it out there, you get the agent deployed, you do it right, you lock it down. And look, at the moment in July, I'm sure we're seeing what we can do to extend past July. We're offering that first month of the cyber hero approvals free of charge. So just jump on, get on trial, get the agents deployed. And that's the nice thing about our products. You get the agents deployed, and it's going to tell you what you're going to have to deal with. You're not going to turn this on one day and be shocked. Oh no, I got to deny. You're going to know exactly what would have been denied in a given period of time.
And don't partially deploy. Just put it everywhere.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because look, there is no, we can only protect, every security product can only detect what it's on. And it can only see what it's on. So put it out there, get it on your servers, get it on your endpoints, and include it in your stack. And look, we've even got template emails. So I mean, we know it costs money. It's a relatively cheap product compared to most EDRs. But one of the things that we've seen a lot of our partners do when we've got the template emails is email their partners saying, hey, we're deploying Threatlocker across the stack. We're going to add this. I've literally seen people make 5x on it. We're going to add this. We're going to charge you this. If you don't want it, you have to opt out. But this is why we're doing it. We've got those emails drafted. We link it to the, the executive orders. We show why it's important. We reference the current news events. Basically, make people understand it. That's all there. We help you draft that. We help you market it to your clients.
That's a no-brainer, guys. Stop what you're doing. Threatlocker.com. Sign up for a demo. Maybe the best 45 minutes you've spent in recently. So, Danny, thank you very much. I can't wait to have you on next. I'm sure the next time there'll be a whole nother story to talk about because they seem to be coming every 6 months or so. Looking forward to seeing you guys at the upcoming events, DataCon, IT Nation for sure. And of course, the Channel Strong Tour, which is still happening in the Northeast today, will happen in the Southwest in September. And thank you for being a part of that. You're kind of anchoring the tour. So appreciate that. And we will catch you guys later. Have a good one.
Thank you.